Welcome to Criminal Injustice, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on America's broken legal system. I'm your host, Casey Chrisman, a criminal defense attorney who fights in the trenches to dismantle the criminal injustice system. In this podcast, I introduce you to the activists, advocates, and experts who are working to expose systemic oppression and create real change. The fight against criminal injustice starts now. Today I sat down with Denver Councilwoman Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez and had an opportunity to discuss with her all of the initiatives and projects that she's working on to try to make life here in Denver better. We're here specifically to talk a little bit about a bill that she's introduced to respond and conform with the Supreme Court's ruling, People v. Camp, requiring municipal courts to follow state court guidelines. She talks to us about how there's been some pushback there and that she's needed to make some concessions in order to get what I consider to be common sense across the finish line. But the good news is we had the time to talk about some other issues that are important to her. And it's clear that her life's work and what she's focused on now for the residents of Denver are cornerstone and something that she has a passion for, and that's education and climate response, and essentially looking to the future for our children. And it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with her and have the opportunity to shed some light into her efforts at the City Council. Councilwoman, welcome to the show.
Yes.
First, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about what you do and what your position is, how long you've been there.
Yeah. So I'm one of the Denver City Council members at large, which means that I represent everyone in the city and county of Denver.
Okay.
So I always joke and say I cover as much ground as the mayor, but don't have the same amount of resources, have the same amount of resources as a district council member.
Okay.
So I represent everyone that the mayor does. And myself and Councilwoman Parody, who's one of the co-sponsors, and then there's Councilwoman Lewis as well, but she's a district council member.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two at-larges, but yeah, so I've been on Denver City Council since 2023, and prior to that, I served in the state legislature for 5 years, from 2019 through 2023 and the end of that session. And yeah, I've worked in the city and county of Denver for over 20 years with children, youth, and families that are multi-system involved, whether it's, child welfare, juvenile justice, truancy court, mental health issues. I've kind of been everything from a caseworker at Denver Human Services, where I started and worked for the city in my formidable years, and then to being a director of an organization that worked with all these different systems. So I worked very closely with judicial officers and public defenders and district attorneys, and then also our school district and our local mental health center, our community mental health centers, and our like Denver Health, like all these different partners that would come to the table when it came to youth who were system involved.
Yeah.
And helping those families navigate through those systems and ultimately trying to prevent either further or future system involvement. And that I even did while in the legislature, because the legislature is a part-time gig.
Yeah.
Not really. It's part-time, like quotes,
Sure.
part-time, because you're there for 120 days, but you're still elected and you're still accountable to your constituents. So I worked 2 jobs year round. I didn't get a break. I still had to do my other work,
Right.
because also it's part-time pay. And I have 3 kids, and my husband and I are raising them in Denver, and so it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little bit about like where I come
Absolutely.
from. Yeah.
Well, and thank you for that. I mean, there's so much in terms of what I want to follow through and follow up on, but it's clear that you have a strong why. Your passion is evident, and there's a through line in that it's helping people and the disadvantaged. There's got to be, what's the reason behind it?
Mhm.
What's the drive?
What's my drive?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm so sorry. What's
It's
your
okay.
why? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is because, when I was asked if I would consider running to be a state representative, a lot of people don't realize what that is,
Mm-hmm.
because they know Congress
Yep.
and they actually know their city council and they know school board, but there's this in between of state legislators that people go, wait a minute, there's a whole group of folks who make laws for our entire state.
Yeah.
What? And they represent us by districts? what?
Yeah.
And so when I done some research after this person asked me, somebody I met through my like juvenile justice work, she called me one weekend and she goes, "Have you ever thought about this?" And I was like, "No." And when I researched it and I saw this is about changing policy. And what I had found in the work that I was doing is that we could only help like one family at a time. You can only do so much before you would run up against a barrier, right? Whether it was dealing with a landlord
Right.
who was being egregious and not fixing, living conditions in their units, and people, I remember families who were living with mold in their homes or a hole in their front door, and the landlord just would refuse to fix it. And I was calling everybody saying, how do we hold them accountable? How can we help this family? We're giving family, rental assistance through our little funds that we have, because like there was no rental assistance at the city or the state at that time. So we would cobble that kind of stuff together. And so because of like those barriers and seeing that
Right.
it was a systemic issue and that it took policy to actually make the change
Right.
and have that larger impact, I was like, this is what I think I need to go do. And what I really loved is the fact that I was still doing my other work. So I was still boots on the ground,
Yeah.
knowing what was happening
Yes.
with families, and then getting to work on the very policy that could have an impact on their lives, and being able to draw that line between the two. Um, and that's really what has driven me. And I also have kids,
Yeah.
and
How old?
they're now 16, 15, and 11. But when I started, they were 8, 6, and 2. So they were a lot younger.
Yeah.
But they influence me all the time, right? And
Yeah.
working on environmental justice issues because I'm worried about their future, working on educational issues like one of the first policies I worked on was instituting um, multicultural uh, multicultural history in like civics courses for high school students,
Yes.
and making it a requirement in our schools, and doing that through the State Department of Education.
Yes.
Like that was one of the first policies. And my daughter then in her ninth grade year, 2 years ago, had ethnic studies class, and it's a required class at her high school. Like that's like, it just shows
That's
me like the
beautiful.
direct impact of that.
Yes.
I worked on a policy to change the age in which children are arrested, prosecuted, um, uh, charged, prosecuted, arrested. You probably know what the age is. Do you know what the age is?
No, give it to me.
You don't know?
Well, so here's the thing. I'm worried in terms of how they can be, when they can be detained and arrested versus,
When can they be charged?
as an adult or as
As a
themselves.
child, as a youth,
Is it 8?
it's 10.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you thought whenever I ask people that question, they think it's 14.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm like, no, it's 10. And that's like a fourth and fifth grader. But I
it's
mean,
crazy.
yeah.
Well, I was hopeful it wasn't 8. But yeah, so those
So,
gradations, like,
yeah,
because then there's the 14, like when does a child apply, the definition of a child apply and things like that. So that's where my
correct.
head was spinning. They're
Yeah.
spinning, but
But yeah,
um,
and then of
okay,
course, like
so
kids can be
the
charged as
absolute
adults. Yeah.
floor
Yeah. So
is
absolute floor is 10 years
no matter
old.
what.
Um,
Okay.
and I worked on that policy for 2 years in the legislature, could not get it passed. Every single DA in the entire state opposed it. They thought I was trying to release the most hardened criminals in the
Did they
world.
actually believe that, or is that just the
And
line
I'm
that they
being
were telling?
facetious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, sure.
yeah, yeah. So I was trying to increase it to 13. That's it,
Okay.
to 13. And yeah, you would have thought I was trying to release the most hardened
Mhm.
criminals in the
Mhm.
world, because there was so much fear that there would be no accountability, that victims would get no recourse, and
Because an 11-year-old should be charged with murder.
and if that something like that happens, it's all more of a question of what's going on for that young person,
Yeah,
what's going on in their
absolutely.
home or in their community,
What do we
or
do
mental
next?
health. Like, how do we help
Yes.
them work through that? So anyway, I worked on those types of policies, and now I have my son who is 11. My daughters were of that age when I was initially working on that policy, right? My oldest. And so when I say like the impacts of kids, of children, of kids of color. Like that's what drives me is growing up in Denver. I grew up in Denver. I'm fourth generation North Denver. And I've either experienced myself and I've also witnessed folks being discriminated against in all kinds of ways, whether it's in their schools, by law enforcement, by other systems.
Every day in the court system.
Yeah, every day in the court system. And so, and the disproportionate amount of people of color and in the youth system, kids of color that are involved in those systems.
Yes.
And that is something that has been a huge driver for me.
Well, there's so much there that, it's, first of all, I'm with you. It's I go to court most days, and it's a majority brown and socioeconomically disadvantaged as well, and even the white folks are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And there's a reason I get up every day angry and fighting and doing what we can here. We call this criminal injustice for a reason. Um, but you also touched on a bunch of things that I would like to just know a little bit more about without derailing the conversation. Can you tell our folks about an at-large bid and what that means as it, and then I guess a little bit more about, give me your childhood. What were you dreaming to do? And then was it always this? Because it seems like maybe you've got that helper's gene, right? So
yeah. So at large, when Councilwoman Parity and I first ran, there were 9 people in the race. And at that time, it was you pick your top 2.
Okay.
It was 1 ballot question, you pick 2. Just recently, and people should know this, is that has changed because City Council referred a ballot measure last November that passed. I did not agree with it, neither did Councilwoman Parity, but it created 2 seats now, seat A and seat B. And you still represent the entire city. But now you have to choose to run for seat A or seat B. And that's because there were some of our colleagues who believed that we should earn 50% of the vote, as opposed to on 1 ballot question, you may get 30% of the vote.
But it's the highest, and then there's the second highest.
Correct. So anyway, there's that. And so, that kind of a bid, it is huge. It's a citywide race. It's a citywide race. And so you're running the same race as the auditor, as the clerk and recorder, as the mayor. Our fundraising limits are different from, I believe, the mayor, but I believe in line with the clerks and the auditor, which are citywide. So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal to try to get out to the entire city, but then also serving in the role. Like I mentioned, it's a lot to have to try to make sure that you're listening to all parts of the city, right? And for me, my main driver is listening to those that don't often get a chance to be heard. And that's because maybe they don't have the privilege and the access. And so that's like listening to those that are most harmed or can be most harmed by the decisions that we make.
I think one of the most important things that you've said is that you've got boots on the ground, and you've said it in two categories, both as it relates to essentially social work, or the broadly speaking, and then the legislature. But then when you're talking about the focus on the young people of the world, you've got your children at home that are, largely driving your decisions. And, I think that's critical. The CEOs say that you got to go into that ground floor and know exactly what's going on. You're bridging those divides out of necessity. So, I guess congratulating you for that. And then in a joking way, do you like running uphill?
I guess I do.
Yeah.
You asked me about my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was raised in a family that was very active, socially, like social activism. My grandfather was a leader in the Chicano movement here in Denver. And so, like, I grew up with a family who went to protests, who were fine with me walking out of school when I was in 8th grade, walking out for equal education and fighting for that. Would write me the excuse I needed so that I could do that, right? I also had my parents, we were just talking about this today in my office. My parents had a lot of expectations for me. I'm the oldest of three, and I always saw my parents helping other people. Always.
Mm-hmm.
We had people live with us, whether they were families or family members or family friends. And if some of those folks, like maybe they like got out of jail not that long ago and they needed a place to stay, my parents would open their door. If it was like one of my aunts with her like three kids, because her oldest was an adult, and then one of their kids, like a baby, they all lived with us. Like they would
Yeah.
take people in to help them if they were having a hard time. My parents worked with youth in the North Side out of Aslan Rec Center and the Quick Newton projects. Like my parents would ran a program where they worked with youth who were like ages 13 to 18, and a lot of them were gang involved, right? They were part of like NSMs, and I was like 8 years old, right? And so they would just bring us along, and so I would be hanging out with these like teenagers,
Yeah.
and but my mom and dad, they weren't like trying to shelter us from them.
Sure.
They actually would employ them to babysit me and my brothers. And so my mom and dad were laughing about that because I mentioned it on a different like show, and I was like, yeah, I was babysat by gang members. But it's because my parents are trying to show them like there's a different path. There's a different
Yeah.
way, and we're
And
gonna
show you too.
yeah.
Everybody's human.
And these
Everybody's
guys were
capable of
like
doing great things.
these are teenagers too, right? So
Yes.
they weren't like, adults, or they were teenagers, and they were showing them things that teenagers do, and sometimes they babysit for people and they get paid,
Yeah.
and they were the best babysitters because they would play basketball with us, they would play video games, whereas like some of my cousins would just like get on the phone and
Yeah.
watch TV and would pay no attention to us.
Yeah.
And so I felt like they took it as a big responsibility
Yes.
that I'm being paid to like care for these children, and I'm going to do it right. And so that was, yeah.
And how many trajectories did your parents change in that regard? You'll never know, right? But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Very cool. And so you get into the legislature, and why only 5 years?
So you could serve up to 8 in
Okay.
one chamber, and then some people go over to the Senate if they start in the House and things like that.
Does it ever go
Um,
the other way?
I rarely see that.
Okay.
They consider the House the lower
Of
chamber.
course. Yep.
The Senate is kind of boring. We have a good love-hate relationship, but um, having young children and being in the legislature was not, and it's still not. I mean, I think it's come a long way now,
Okay.
but even when I joined, it wasn't as prominent. There were just a few of us,
Okay.
and we kind of bonded together. And I'd leave off the House floor when we were being held hostage by Republicans and their filibustering. And I
Yeah.
would like step off the House floor at like 7:30 p.m. because we'd still be there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd FaceTime my kids to tell them good night. And that was really hard, and I feel a lot of guilt for that, for not being there many nights for dinners, for good nights, for bedtime routines. Then they started getting older and they started doing activities and all this stuff, and my husband was like running everybody around. But on top of that, the the workplace at the legislature was pretty toxic.
Mm.
And I loved doing the work that I was doing. I loved making policy. I loved serving. And I saw that the at-large seats were opening up because Robin Kinich and Debbie Ortega were term limited.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, I've worked in the city and county of Denver my entire career. This isn't a new thing for me. I would always want to work for the city again. And so I thought, this is the opportunity. This is the moment. If I want to um, go for that shot, I'm going to go for it. And said, okay, like let's go for it. Um, and also, like it did create an opportunity for a little bit different balance in a like as a mom
Mm-hmm.
and having now teenage daughters
Yeah.
and trying to help them like shepherd them through that adolescent phase and how that is such a crucial time in their life that I wanted to make sure I was also there for them. So put all my eggs in the basket and said, if we're going to go for this,
That's
and went
amazing.
for a citywide race from a house race to like citywide.
And so, obviously, again, you like running uphill.
Yes.
Um, But no, I mean, there are a couple things there. Obviously, the dedication to your children and the sacrifice that you did make, and then at some point you didn't want to make any longer. But also, it seems like, at least I saw in your face and in your eyes, that maybe it's even a better fit,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so that in itself is, there's the books about, and I wish I could remember the author, but Good to Great and then Staying Great. And it
Hmm.
talks about it's not just about getting the right people, but getting them in the right seat,
Hmm.
or right
Hmm.
person on the bus, but in the right seat. And it seems like maybe you're in the right seat.
I hope so. I hope
Yeah.
people think that.
Okay. Well, and so it sounds like you've been getting a lot done already,
Hmm.
and I'm about to touch on People v. Camp and what you guys have
Hmm.
been trying
Hmm.
to tailor to the Supreme Court's ruling. But I did want to jump back quickly, and you mentioned the work you mentioned a lot of the education work for children,
Hmm.
some of the climate initiatives. What is Denver doing? Can you give us an idea of what we're focused on, where our pain points are? I know water's a lot of it.
Yeah, water is a lot of it. I know that there's the initiative, the Energize Denver, which is requires certain buildings to come into compliance with
Okay.
like energy efficiencies and what type of energy they're using. I don't know all of the specifics around that. But we do have our Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency, I believe it stands for
Man,
CASR.
they did a great job naming it. I
Yeah,
want to make sure that
yeah.
you know how to say it and that we remember it.
There's a lot of acronyms in the city, and government in general. But we do have that office. That office was stood up before I entered council. I think we could be doing more to make sure that that office is well resourced and funded
Okay.
to address some of the environmental issues. Right now, we're in the topics of data centers, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
is the impact of data centers on our environment, on our communities? And what kind of, if we're on the business side of it, people are like, well, they are, they bring jobs.
Right.
You can argue a couple of things there about
Yes.
like how
Yes.
many jobs does it bring and how
Net
many
jobs, exactly.
how
Yeah.
many are temporary, how many are long term, all of those things. So we're in the middle of that right now, and so I've actually joined. I'll be joining the data center working group, and we just passed the moratorium, so it's a 1 year ban.
Okay.
We did that on Monday
1 year
night
ban on
on
data
data
center building.
centers in Denver,
Okay.
and the working group will be convening with hopefully a good group of folks, people that are experts in the area, people who are health experts, environmental experts. We have the trades union folks that are
Mhm.
there because they're the ones building them, um, so that we can come up with policy to provide guardrails around if they are built here,
Mhm.
what under what circumstances and what parameters.
Okay. And I mean, obviously, that's important work. It is in response to something, right?
Hmm.
And what I'd like, and it's really just me getting nerdy and wanting to know, what are we doing in terms of looking forward towards, being creative with
Hmm.
water, or, and I love the data center because that's not something we normally think about as, I mean, we are now, but when I think you're walking down the street and you're wondering, who's deciding where to put the recycling bins and how invested are we in that? But it's nice to see the other bogeys
Hmm.
out there and put it all into perspective.
Hmm.
Um, so People v. Camp, Supreme Court ruling, we've talked about it, but essentially struck down municipal ordinances that had sentences higher than the
Hmm. Hmm.
state crimes, and uh, you at the city council have introduced a bill that, and I'm going to speak very broadly, I'm
Hmm.
going to let you get the details, that essentially says we as a city are going to comply with the Supreme Court ruling.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about the pushback and all of that, but it seems from maybe just a general standpoint or just someone who doesn't deal with this every day, why isn't that a no-brainer? Why aren't we just, hey, this is easy, and why is there opposition? Why is it a difficult issue to handle?
Yeah. So the pushback, I mean, I guess the reason why that it's difficult is because not only are we trying to make sure our code is in compliance with the Supreme Court ruling, our courts aren't in compliance. Absolutely. Like they're case by case dealing with this, or they have a list, and they're working with the public defenders and the city prosecutors to make sure they're all on the same page. But our code should be also reflected, and we should be in compliance there.
Okay.
So that's one. Two, we have a number of municipal only offenses, right? Many other cities, a lot of cities have their own municipal code and offenses,
Right.
and it's because you determine as a city, like, these are things we want to charge people with.
Yes.
Because we've had these concerns, right?
Important to us. Yes.
And that's totally fine. And so we've decided to take those on as well, because the municipal only offenses, majority of them, if not almost all of them, are similar in severity as the state petty offenses that are being dropped down to
Right.
that 10-day sentence,
Yes.
or 10-day max sentence. And so we decided to take that on as well, because we
Yes.
felt like there would still be an imbalance by having these state petty, or these offenses that have state corollaries that are being captured under that 10-day, and then still have on our books a bunch of other types of offenses that have a max of 300 days. That just still seems very imbalanced, and we see it as still an equity issue.
And I couldn't agree more. I guess, when you're in law school, they talk about, there's the case law and the judiciary, the stare decisis, and then we have the code, the statutes, and so often they diverge, and then we're just relying on people to keep the promises that they said they're going to do, or be able to balance every scenario appropriately in a totality of the circumstances. So bringing that in line and also in balance, it seems, and I guess that's what I'm getting at, it seems like a no-brainer.
Correct.
Why is there pushback?
Yeah. That's a good question, because I agree. Like, I think it is a no-brainer. But I think it becomes an issue of, there are groups, like mainly probably some of our business groups, that feel like us doing this are going to make things worse for downtown, for instance, right? There's an interest in
Right.
what this then means, and the public perception, right? That we're not being tough on crime, and we're allowing people to get away with things. But the main line that I've said over and over again in this bill, we are not introducing any new crimes, and we're not taking away any crimes.
Right.
We are simply changing the sentencing structure to make sure that we are aligning, and we're changing the classification system that wasn't, that we didn't have before.
No.
It didn't exist.
Open container.
It was just
Open
one big
container in
bucket.
Aurora, up to a year in jail. Motor vehicle theft, up to a year in jail. Assault and battery on your wife, up to a year in jail. Hostage situation.
Same here.
It's crazy.
Dog off
Yes.
leash, up to 300 days in jail. Same as assault, up to 300 days. Those are like very
So the stratification is
smoking on the
necessary.
16th Street Mall. Smoking on the 16th Street Mall, up to 300 days in jail. Now, and even the prosecutors have said, nobody's being sentenced to 300 days in jail.
Sure.
So then
Put it on the books.
why don't we just change it?
Okay. And so you recently had a hearing on May 13th, and I'm going to let you tell the story, but it sounds like there's a lot of progress made. You had to make some concessions, but perhaps that's making it more collaborative. Can you tell us some of the players, their involvement, and then what happened on May 13th?
Yeah. We've been working very intentionally with the city attorney's office, with the municipal public defender's office, and with the mayor's administration. We've had conversations with some of the agencies that also have some regulatory offenses that this would impact.
Right.
So we've talked to kind of everybody on the city side. We've also have some of our coalition members, like Colorado Freedom Fund, who has been very involved in a lot of the
Colorado
conversations.
Freedom, yeah.
Yes. We've met with victims' rights organizations, Blue Bench, Rosandom, Violence Free Colorado. Like, we've met with some of these groups to better understand what their concerns might be.
Met with John Walsh too, right?
We met with DA Walsh a few times, also to clear up some of the misunderstandings that he may have from his initial letter that he submitted to council members, which wasn't a letter on the bill at the time that was before us. It was the like original bill. So that was a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
We've, I feel like we've cleared that up with
Okay.
him. So we've talked to those folks, and the collaboration I feel like on our end has been just great.
Okay.
I mean, we're constantly being transparent. Anytime we have a new draft of the bill, we are sending it out to partners for feedback. We are setting up meetings to meet with them, like almost feels like almost weekly, bi-weekly, to go through the changes of the bill to see if there are still concerns. Sometimes it feels like the goalpost is moving on us, which I'm not a stranger to that. I'm working on the policies I worked on in the past. I've definitely have experienced that when folks are scared of the change, right? They're nervous for a change because they're nervous, like, what if we miss something? But
Right.
that's the great thing about the legislative process, is that if we miss something, we have the power to go back and fix it.
Don't let perfect get in the way of great.
I mean, that's what happens. Like at the state level, I actually worked on 271, which is the bill that then led to the case, right? So that was the change of the to the 10-day max for these state petty offenses.
Right.
That work was done by the CCJJ, the Colorado Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice.
Do they give you an acronym book when you get elected? Do they say these are all the things you have to remember?
No, they don't. You have to figure it out on
So
your
you
own.
make your own study guide.
Yes,
Okay,
but I was
cool.
part of the CCJJ. While I was in the legislature, I was appointed by the Speaker of the House as one of the legislative representatives. And so that was like our state public defender and the council, the District Attorney's Council, CDAC.
Right, CDAC.
They actually came together and proposed the changes for those state petty offenses. And then it became an equal protection issue, right? Because then there were all these municipal offenses that were not in alignment with a lot of the state offenses that were the same. So anyway, I had worked on that in 2021. I was one of the bill sponsors of that legislation. So then I now come to the city and we're trying to like kind of have the same fight.
Were you surprised at the fight that you had to, I mean, seemed like this kind of maybe was just a cleanup and hey, we need to look at these and how are we going to structure this post-decision? Were you surprised by the pushback or the level of work that you were going to have to do into what seemed like a housekeeping bill?
No, I mean, I wasn't necessarily surprised that the prosecutors were going to push back. I think we knew that would happen. And we knew that the mayor's office, same, right? Because there's not, I would say that we agree to disagree on when it comes to when it comes to carceral systems, how they're utilized, and all of those things with the mayor. And so I knew there would be pushback to this extent where I feel that we have been extremely collaborative, extremely transparent and forthcoming. That is, I was not expecting that. I thought we can work past this. There's going to be things that nobody's going to be happy about. And, according to my colleagues on city council, many of them say, well, if nobody's happy, then that means it's a good bill, which I don't always agree with, but.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with compromise in legislatures and all that.
Yes.
So, and I think one of the major through lines that I've gotten here today is just, you are fighting against shadows in this. You're fighting against how the headline is going to be written, not what an actual deep analysis of what is needed. And I think, we're all frustrated with that. But B, I guess from my perspective, I'm proud of you for continuing to try and to continue to have that fight. The truth is, you're not only are you punching against shadows in terms of the political arena, but on this subject matter specifically. You mentioned it a couple times. This is what happens when you try to fix the criminal injustice system. You're labeled the monster. We have to go above and beyond and show them. And again, the goalpost move. We never thought they'd do that, but now we're this far, so we got to change it here. So yeah, the stories that they're going to say, and it's just unfortunate that we don't have enough time or the desire to spend enough time with those issues. But what I can say is that it's been an absolute pleasure this whole time I knew I had 1,000 more questions I wanted to ask you. So if you ever want to come
Mhm.
back, we would love to have you.
Yeah.
You're just, this was fantastic. Thank
More
you
than
so
happy
much.
to. And if you need to do a part two once the bill is passed,
Happy to, yeah.
then we can
Um,
talk about that.
and I guess I should have asked this to begin with, but I want to make sure that anybody listening here has the ability to take action in
Mhm.
anything that you've touched on. I mean, feel free to, the initiatives with children or with this bill, anything that is an important plug for you, please let us know.
Yeah. I mean, people can always reach out to my office if they, want to connect.
Okay.
Um,
Best
the
way? Is
best
there an
way is
email?
online, like going to denvergov.org.
Okay.
You can click on where city council is and all of our like office information is there. So that's probably the easiest way, because if I try to read off my email, it's very long because my
Okay,
name is
sure,
very
sure.
long.
Fair.
And so it might
Yeah.
it might get a little
But
lost.
go there.
But go there.
Okay.
But I encourage people to get involved. Like, it might be boring to try to listen on Monday nights when we meet as a full body. My parents tune in. That's their
That's
Monday
great.
night primetime television. And they're always
Thanks, Mom
texting
and
me.
Dad.
Yes.
Love
They're
that.
always like, you did a good job. And so they're my biggest cheerleaders. But honestly, you can tune in from, the comfort of your own home. You
Yeah.
can live stream city council anytime if you want to know what's going on, what things are coming before us, because it's everything from contracts to proposed legislation and policy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's always very interesting, I think. And so yeah, if people want to learn what we're doing, like
Yeah.
tune in.
And for me, that's important because I'm sitting here asking you for other resources. Oh, let's go talk to this acronym, right?
Hmm.
But I guarantee, I mean, I don't know what the viewership is, but it's not nearly enough. And people just need to know what you folks are trying to
Hmm.
accomplish for them,
Hmm.
right? And so tune in and get understand what your city council is doing. I think
Hmm.
that's perfect direction for
And you
us.
could sign up for council members' newsletters. So I encourage folks at
Okay.
whatever district you live in,
Mhm.
sign up for that council members' newsletter, which you could do on through their website, which
Mhm.
is all on denvergov.org. You can also sign up for your at-larges, because
Yes.
you have 3 council members that represent you. You have your district council member and you have your 2 at-larges.
Okay.
So always remember that you have all 3 of those folks.
Absolutely. Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez, everybody. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.